Now, farmers and residents living along the waterways of the White Volta River in the northeast region are in a hurry to salvage their farm produce and evacuate ahead of the spillage of the Bagre Dam. The annual opening of the dam, which often coincides with heavy rains, always leaves a devastating trail of destruction in about 185 communities within the SADA zone, and with an estimated population of 200,000 people constantly at risk. The spillage last year caused the death of 13 people and destroyed several hectares of farm crops and other properties across the northeast region. Now, ahead of the exercise on Friday, some farmers in the West Mamprusi and Mamprugu-Moduri districts say they are preparing for the worst. They complained about no assistance from the National Disaster Management Organization to help them evacuate. Let's look at this report.
The spillage is an annual occurrence where billions of gallons of water are released from the Bagre Dam. The waters are barreled dangerously into the tributaries of the White Volta River in the northern, northeast, upper east, and savannah regions, starting from Gbenku at Zebela, uprooting trees, turning farmlands into rivers, and forcing families to abandon their homes. The dam is mostly spilled around August and September each year, when it could no longer contain above its 235 meters depth. Around 13 people were killed in the region last year and over 2,000 forced to leave their homes due to floods caused by torrential rains and the opening of the dam. This year, operators of the dam on Tuesday issued an alert announcing the dam will be spilled between August 27 and 30. But even before the spillage could start, hundreds of farmlands in communities in the West Mamprusi and Mamprugu-Moduri district, which are usually the hardest hit, are already submerged in floodwaters caused by weeks of torrential rains in the region. The situation has left some farmers and residents in panic. At Kunkwa and Pasinkwe, these desperate farmers, as part of preparations to move to higher grounds, were risking their lives using old canoes to salvage their drowning produce. We use canoe to salvage these crops. We are risking our lives because we have to feed our family. We stand in the water at neck level to harvest what we could. We have lost much already. At our neck level, we stand in the reptiles-infested water to pick up the crops. We are doing all this just to get something to eat. We are fighting to get something in our stomach. This is how we risk our lives every year. That is why you always hear people are drowned. Every year, people die in this community as a result of the spillage. For several decades every year, a combination of bad roads, incessant rain, and flooding along tributaries of the White Volta River completely cut the overseas communities from the rest of the region. About 4 people died in these two communities last year due to the twin occurrence of the dam spillage and heavy downpours. The farmers here, while bracing themselves for the looming catastrophe, are criticizing the National Disaster Management Organization for their poor handling of previous flooding situations. The NADMO officials always show up late when the harm has already been caused. Last year, for instance, we had evacuated all by ourselves before they came. We always expect NADMO officials to give us enough information ahead on how to escape the vagaries of the spillage. But they always wait and show up only after we are devastated by the incident.
Upper East Regional Correspondent Albert Sori joins us via Zoom with more details. Now, Albert, we've been talking about this for days. Jerry Asamani, who is the head of NADMO in your region, has said that the flooding was actually expected to begin before tomorrow. Is there any indication that there will be flooding?
Well, normally when the dam is spilled in Burkina Faso, it takes a number of days before we start seeing the effect of it in the Upper East region. So for now, it will be difficult to tell. The problem is that we have had a number of rains in the Upper East region. Usually that is what compounds the situation when the Bagre Dam is spilled. The rains that we have here add up to the flood waters from Burkina Faso, and that is why we usually have serious flooding. Most people are only praying that we don't experience more rains in the coming days, because we had a lot of rains in the last 2 weeks. This week we haven't had so many rains, so we are hoping that we don't get rains, and hopefully we don't record serious floods like we did last year.
Now, we just heard from a number of farmers who are rushing to evacuate everything they can before the flooding begins, if it does. From what you've observed, have these farmers been able to move their things out?
Yes, so in Kwalugu, for instance, what happens is you have area is a slope. So where you have the basin of the White Volta is where you have the farms, and then the high lands is where you have the settlement. So the people go into the farms to do the farming and go home. And so for the coming days, what they are expected to do is to stay away from the farms because of the risk that will be involved when you go to the farm. There are those who have already managed to harvest something. The rest of them, you know, their crops are not mature for them to even harvest. You have granite, which, you know, usually you have to harvest by uprooting the plant. They cannot harvest it because it is not time. So they're just hoping we don't get floods so that they can get the rest of their harvest this year.
Many thanks, Albert, for bringing us those updates. Let's move over to the Upper West region, where our correspondent Rafiq Salam joins us via Zoom. Now, Rafiq, we know that the Upper West region is also grappling with the effect of the rains that cut off these 3 roads earlier. It looks like the issues could be compounded with the Bagre Dam spillage.
Yeah, because if the Bagre Dam is spilled in the Upper West region, it will be something like a double agony for a double jeopardy for the people here, because they have to deal with their own floods that occurred in the region some 14 days ago. And so NADMO, some few weeks ago, started educating, sensitizing the people on the need to move to higher grounds.
Rafiq Salam there is our correspondent from the Upper West region. Apologies for the loss in the connection there. We will re-establish contact with him. But as you heard Rafiq say, the Upper West region has had its fair share of flash floods that have seen some major roads in the region cut off. Let's go back to Rafiq and get a full picture of what the situation is currently. So Rafiq, you were on the points, but we also want to know, how are the residents preparing for possible flooding?
NADMO some 2 weeks ago started sensitizing the people, educating them on the need to move to higher grounds. Remember, the Upper West region, when this Bagre Dam is filled, from those communities that are lying around the Black Water, they are the communities that are mostly affected. And so from Kokolugu up to somewhere around Bole Bomboy, you can count as many as 183 communities lying closer to the Black Water. In the Upper West region, we're having about 15 to 20 communities that are lying closer to the Black Water. And so NADMO, some few weeks ago, started the education, started sensitizing them, and I can report to you that as of this morning, there were some around Dipe, Kokolugu, and other areas, and they have moved all the people, they have evacuated them to higher lands. And so one thing good about the issues here is that the people, they are using the Black Water, they have their farms closer to the Black Water. So definitely what they do is that they have their farmhouses, they sleep there because of their farms. But now that they are talking about the spillage, NADMO has been able to speak to them, and they have moved to their communities, not closer to the Black Water. So that's what's happening in the Upper West region now.
Now, again, after the initial flooding that cut off the roads, we learned that Nadmo itself was struck by disaster because their warehouses storing relief items were cut off. Has this issue been resolved?
For Nadmo, it was something like a double jeopardy for them. Because as I speak to you now, Nadmo was not able to move to some of the areas, some of the affected areas. A place like Charapong, Kunchin, and other areas that are closer to the Black Volta, they were not able to have access to those communities. Even the initial assessment that Nadmo did was based on the assembly members of those electoral areas who were able to give them the figures regarding the people that were affected by the floods. And so Nadmo themselves actually have not been able to move to these communities because they themselves were cut out. Like you said, some of their warehouses, their main houses, is also located in the center of the region, and so somehow they were also cut off. And so Nadmo, they have that challenge there.
Right.
But for now, they have been able to move because now that they have gotten roads that they can have a detour and easy access. They have moved to some of these communities, spoke to the people, and they have moved to higher grounds now.
Thank you very much, Rafiq Salam, for those updates.